Okay, thanks for everyone for attending this reading with author Barry Spacks. After the reading, you can avail yourself of books and a CD regarding women, The Hope of the Air, Barry's latest book, and the CD, A Private Reading, with obviously Barry reading some of his poetry on it. The books are both $15 and the CD is $12, and he'd be more than happy to sign any things that you would purchase afterwards. Barry Spacks is the author of numerous works in a multitude of genres: stories, novels, essays, reviews, libretti, and 9 books of poetry, including The Company of Children, Something Human, Teaching the Penguins to Fly, Imagining a Unicorn, Spacks Street, New and Selected Poems, winner of the Commonwealth Club of California's Poetry Medal, Brief Sparrow, Regarding Women, winner of the Cherry Grove Collections Prize, and his most recent, The Hope of the Air. Mr. Spacks is also an artist, a singer-songwriter, actor, a professor of literature, first at MIT, currently at the University of California at Santa Barbara, and a sometimes student of Tibetan Buddhism. Which is to say that Mr. Spacks, a native of Philadelphia, has indeed, as he writes in California Poem, buried his Eastern thoughts at the edge of Nevada and slipped through customs into the serene and surreal occupations and preoccupations of the Golden State where he now resides. And the Hope of the Air is itself a golden state. Many golden states, a sequence of golden states sung by the generous poet, the downright poet, the poet on the edge of sleep, in dreams, wide awake and amazed by unending transformation, a Bashoian world of affirming potentialities. Where the east of Mr. Spacks' youth, a world of uncles, produce markets, and biblically slow elevators, remains woven through the Hope of the Air as a fondly remembered place of poetic awakenings, a place, yes, buried perhaps, not for good and all, but like all treasures brought west for safekeeping, to lie content in the earth like potatoes, sprouting still in the poet's mind. While this east lingers, it is the east of Barry Spacks' present that illuminates all here, the east of Tibet, of the Buddhist community in Trinity County in far northern California, where Mr. Spacks and his wife Kimberly Snow spent 6 years studying and working in the kitchen. But don't imagine this east as a tranced out Shangri-La, the lost paradise of James Hilton's eponymous novel, allegedly also a product of Trinity County in far northern California. Ms. Snow has called this east, this hot, wet California kitchen, a place of Tibetan disorder, a poetic form of its own perhaps, Tibetan disorder that determines the restless world of the Hope of the Air, a world of artists and sandwiches and friends, of spiders that advance like grandfathers, blind teenagers that advance on LA, a bursting human and the slow artistry of beach stones, a world where the poet become an Italian restaurant may seduce you with his massive menu, his glad-handing maitre d', where the poet, dreaming of himself as posthumous smoke, may watch with pleasure as his clothes gain new affections from the nameless and needful inheritors at Goodwill, inheritors who are no more the poets than his suits or his 6 ties. This is the generous, luminous world of Barry Spacks. Please join me in welcoming him to Barry College.
I'm kind of stunned by that wonderful introduction, Mike. I think Mike knows more about me at this moment than I know about myself. And that was like a wonderful poem, kind of riff on all sorts of poems that some of them just brought back to my memory by the occasional references that he's just gluing together in that lovely way. Thank you so much. I want to read some poems from these recent books, and as a usual practice, I like to dust off some older ones too. And what I tend to do every time I read poems is to go through just about everything I have with me and see which poems want to be read. And every once in a while, one or another will speak up and say, "Hey, me, how come I never get read?" And so I find myself trying out something that I've never offered to an audience before. And I'd like to start with one of those as I worked over one I've read before, but not for a long time. So we'll just let that count. It's called, and it's a teacher's poem. And since you folks are either teachers or are involved with teachers, you might be interested in it for that reason. It's called Themes on Love, and it's a rhyming poem, and it came from the time when I was teaching in the General Humanities Department at MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And actually, I felt it was the beginning of my real education, in the sense that you do pick up all kinds of stuff while you're, at a four-year undergraduate college, but there's nothing comparing to having to suddenly hold forth on Greek philosophy, because that's, part of the syllabus. And you just never happen to have studied that, but tomorrow you're going to have to hold forth on it. So in a way, your education begins when you have to teach other people and you have to learn stuff. The poem is based on our reading Plato's Symposium. Those of you who are into Plato will remember that that's a dialogue about the nature of love. And I think that's the only footnoting that the poem needs. Themes on love. Grading themes on love at MIT. One-man symposium at 3 a.m. Across the court I saw a light. Another office holder working late. While Plato on a silver pillow rode above the waves of pre-sophistic prose, I jotted teachers' notions that were not as brave as our two lamps against the glut of dawn. But when I clicked mine off, his too at once was gone, had been my echo in a distant sheen of glass, had been my own. And I was lonely then and wrote these English words. Are you up for a totally silly poem? Here's one I don't think ever had the courage to read to an audience, but I'm going to do it. It's called The Vet of Our Dreams, and it's one of those poems that has an epigraph under the title, this one from the New York Times. And it's about trying to maintain an elk herd. It's an article about maintaining an elk herd, and I just took these lines from it. The younger bull may now try to take over as paramount commander of the herd, but if he does, the veterinarian will saw his antlers off too. The vet of our dreams. Poor bull, you sort of lost your head and took the whole elk herd to bed. All for one and one for all. For this, your antlers had to fall. The vet who guards the neighborhood removed them for the grouply good. Your wild lifestyle caused too much fuss among the more monogamous, who find, for better or for worse, the horny bull a civic curse. And now we'll straightway call the vet as soon as youngsters start a set. The vet of our dreams, whose trusty saw creates one nation under law. I'll read one more early poem before I turn to some more recent stuff. I gather you guys probably don't get a great deal of snow. This poem has some snow in it, so you get some vicarious snow this way. For years I lived in Wellesley, Massachusetts, and my next door neighbor was Mr. Nielsen. We were there for 23 years, and I never got on a first name basis with him. He was always Mr. Nielsen. He called me Barry. Nielsen. They called me Battling Nelson, said Nielsen, my neighbor. Assumed I was Irish. Fought my way to school and back, plus home for lunch. There's something I can't understand. Somebody's parking a car at his curb. What do they think? They live in my house? Or he's up on the roof, age 76, brooming away the snow. Insane, my daughter says. It insulates. We shrug. We both say, Nielsen.
Nielsen's throwing a stone at a dog. It's not his dog. Why use his tree? Each fall, he clears the leaves to his very boundary, exact. I guess that all along, with his passion for neatness and property, he'd wanted only this. Oh, world, makes sense. You boys, get off that wall. Is that your wall? Is that your wall? I really did love the old guy, but I needed to try to get a little portrait of him. A student came into my office once when I was teaching at MIT. And we had a nice chat, and then at the end he said, "Oh, incidentally, I thought I'd ask your advice." It was coming on toward Valentine's Day. He said, "I usually give my girlfriend a little box of chocolates and a big Valentine poem, or if it's a great big box of chocolates, I probably settle for a small Valentine poem." And I thought, hey, let's all do that. That's a good class exercise. Write a little poem to go with a great big box of chocolates, or write a long poem to go with a little tiny box of chocolates. So this is my effort at that exercise, and it's entitled appropriately Valentine. I'll usually give you a little poem and a great big box of chocolates, or more of a poem and less of a box. And who can say which we'll have, except the chances for chocolate grow smaller word for word. If this keeps going on, we're down to 6 fruits and nuts, no less, 3 caramels, 1 angel cream, watch out, a last Jordan almond, we'd better bite it and whoops, it's gone. There's nothing left but you and me and a yen, I tell you, heavy for sweets. Now, what should we do about that? Here's a poem that probably is starting to need a footnote. You know, if you make contemporary references in your work, after a while, people are going to find it a little incomprehensible. I think this is right on the, let me check. How many people know right offhand who I'm referring to if I mention the name of Sybil Shepherd? See what I mean? About half of you need to be told that Sybil Shepherd is not a major actress. She hasn't been seen very much anymore. She had a real fine heyday at one point. She was in an important TV series with Bruce Willis, and Bruce Willis's career took off from that series, and he's a major star. And Sybil's still doing work, but half the people in this room aren't acquainted with her, and that's not their fault. But she turns up in this poem, so that's my footnote. This poem is entitled, What's Her Name? My mother had Alzheimer's. Fearing combustion, she stacked on refrigerator shelves her unread evening papers, laughed to dazzle away, forgetting the names of relatives, friends, discarding at last her own. I held her hand, unknown, beside her bed as she babbled on. With me, if it's outs, it's early. Only suddenly bridgeless synaptic gaps, transitions, bombed away. I'll recall in detail a book I read years before, or the Leia of Barson's Drugs, where I soda jerked at age 15, but not some actor's or entertainer's name. I can see this actress, her subtle beauty, the delicate wit of her lifted brow. She stretches her arms in her languorous way, Ms. Nameless. So I worked for recall. Remember some scandal sheet lie about her, the dress she wore presenting an Oscar. Maybe she'll whisper her name in my ear. Names, names, they won't cross the border. I'll spend the whole of a Sunday morning seeking the mock news announcer on Saturday night, that tumble-down clown who suddenly, Sybil Shepherd, Sybil Shepherd, my God, you can't imagine the comfort, dear Sybil, simply to speak out your name. I sent a copy of that to Sybil Shepherd, but she never whispered a thing back. Never heard it back from her. Here's a poem that came to me from our campus at the University of California, Santa Barbara, called The Blind Girl at the Bus Stop. Smiling behind her mirror glasses, she asks which bus is pulling in. The 24, not hers. Her dog leads her back under eaves into shade, a pretty dark-haired girl, so placid, settled on the bus stop bench. I noticed her before at a dance without the dog, with a handsome boy who'd led her gracefully out to the floor with the lightest conceivable touching of fingers, reggae music, her hair done soul in bead braids. Now I see myself small in the silver of her glasses. I wait at the end of the line. I mount my bus. She's smiling out of her darkness. The dog sits and she touches its head with a touch like the handsome boy's. I carry it with me, that smile. At home, I experiment. I close my eyes, becoming her, my own quenched self, as vast as the unrelenting dark. She has no choice but to trust. Here's a poem that might sit with some of your own experience if you're one of the younger people out here. For me, it's a nostalgia poem looking back over, believe me, a vast distance. It's called Young Lovers. Oh, and I think it could use some footnoting too these days. It mentions various TV shows that were current in my youth, like A Show of Shows, which was Sid Caesar's comedy program, or Playhouse 90, which was live dramatic television, the storytelling television live, or Today, which I think is still going, and Sunrise Semester, which was a teaching thing, like you get up at 6 o'clock and learn French, you tune in Sunrise Semester. Young Lovers. Each time I brought her home from the movie, is Papa and Mama waiting, watching. Mama, who claimed to like me, meaning cakes and chat and coffee. Papa, slugging his beers. He never could wait me out. At last, had to leave the TV to us. No hope I'd go home early, even once. Exhausted, he knew exactly what we would be up to as soon as he rose from Playhouse 90. Papa, I would have waited, if need be, through Sunrise Semester. Today, Doomsday, to huddle with her on that creaky couch, serious at our own playhouse, alone at last to our show of shows, whispering of vast time ahead. No Papa blear-eyed and barca-lounger, no Mama to call down, has he left? Iris in a silver vase, music, moonlight, a four-poster bed. Here's a little poem that's kind of a fable, I guess. We were talking at a kind of little session we had earlier about the way the poems have a kind of a story, maybe a little story surface that kind of engage you in terms of their material, and you're relating to that. And then there's a kind of another kind of reference. We're talking about it as the almost said. You almost say it, but you don't quite. You kind of hint at it. So this is one of those poems that might seem just to skate over a surface, but look for its life-changing meaning, okay? It's called Low Budget Film. A boy with balloons descends along the windows of the dorm, knocks on the glass. A girl arrives, buys a balloon, and as he hands it off, naturally, he sinks. Another smiles, buys, till he holds at last a single balloon to keep him afloat and to that final window comes the loveliest girl in the world. Because she buys a balloon. He comes down to her. He lands. It's about marriage, guys. Here's another totally silly poem, but it is about something in addition to its silliness. I won't tell you what it is. It comes from a book by just about an unknown author these days. She was known in the 1920s, Mary McLean. She's kind of one of the great narcissistic writers of all time. And she's fascinated by herself, and she wrote books titled "I Married Mary McLean." Just a lovely writer, I think. You just enjoy her like all get out. And one particular line from her writing just grabbed me. "I love my shoes" is the line, and so I put it under the title of this book. Well, a line from Mary McLean: "I love my shoes. I love mine too, Mary. Yet but for you would I think to say so? Your voice urged me, first in the shower, then again in bed, declaring, why not enter a room full of people and cry out for once the total truth? Delighted to see you. I love my shoes." I might come back to this for another poem or so, but let me move on to the other book that I've got here. Both of these came out this year by a kind of accident. I decided to put together a lot of poems that mention women or about women, and I sent that out to a contest, and it won the contest. And then a couple days later, I discovered that a book of poems I'd almost forgotten about because they'd been held by the Michigan State University Press for 4 years while they wondered whether they could find the money to continue their wonderful series. A couple days later, somehow or other, they found the money, and so I wound up with 2 books coming out in the same year, which is really kind of unusual for a poet. Here's a poem entitled Zen Pace, and it's dedicated to one of my former students, Mark Saunders. Mark was one of those students who came around and said, "I understand you are into Buddhism, tell me a little bit about it." And so I tried, but we were between classes, we didn't really have enough time. And so I sat down and wrote this poem and sort of handed it to Mark. Zen Pace. Wincing at waste, write pocket notes on the innocent side of used pages. Save long-distance calls till Sunday. Chase the last slipping rice grain around your plate, and even hurry slowly, acting always with trustful slowness within, mourning even the loss of a friend with that dignity in her spirit never gone. You have no need but to move sleep to waking, insult to love, happening to happening, at the pace of a gradual smile, at the pace of the hammer-stroke heart that proceeds to the next full beat, and then the next. Another campus poem. I think almost everybody who writes poetry probably has the same experience, that you're just moving along through your day or whatever, and then something tells you to look at this or listen to that. I don't know what that thing is, but if you follow poets around, they're kind of erratic companions, because suddenly they start staring at a tree or whatever. I once was being the chaperone, cicerone for Mariana Moore, who came to read at Wellesley College late in her life, and kind of shocked her deep onto the evening we were in the faculty club by just turning to her in the way of incidental conversation. I said, "I see you're very interested in wood." And she said, "What? What?" Well, I had noticed that she was rubbing the tables and the banisters and things, and I just sort of stored that up, but she thought I had somehow invaded her mind. So this is something I saw on the college path called Dumb Bird. On the campus path, a slice of bread skims at each beak snip, then tumbles back as one by one, like arty dancers, a scatter of blackbirds gives it a peck, till for reasons unknown, except to bird mind, they all rise at once to swoop away and settle as ornaments of coal to be Christmas a tree. But shortly, they're back at the bread again, except there's always this skittish one, an underdog bird who halts halfway and never quite gets his crumb. It would be you, little Stupidon, I'd have to pause to brood upon. Dumb bird, I tell you, I'm tired of this, pardon me, this, be my guest. I tell you, I'll have no more of it. You're rushing partway to the bread. Shove in there, damn you. Grab your share. Oh, timid bird, honey, eat, eat. I'm talking about eating. I have to read you my poem called The Sandwich. Remember that outrageous sandwich you ordered from the deli menu? How impatiently you waited, sipping more water than you wanted, rearranging the silverware before your first huge, shameless bite. But then came conversation about some triumph that you yearned for badly, so you'd be rich and famous and the eater of just such sandwich, as you hardly noticed, dissolving through the rapid genuflections of your ardent mouth. Sad the glory's lessening, last crisp click of bacon, final turkey succulence, the little smile of tomato in the small embrace of bread, so fresh, so sourdough. Which made you stop to think a bit, for where had you been while all the rest went down? Oh, now you study even every pepper grain, each remnant trace of mayonnaise, going at it slow. I was mentioning in our question and answer session about poetry and fiction writing and so on that you never can anticipate the kinds of useful thoughts that might come in when you're traveling around. And as I've been traveling through Georgia, this is the 5th place I've read in so many days on the Georgia circuit. And I didn't get some wonderful idea for a poem, but I got an idea for the title of my next book of poems, which of course doesn't exist. So the only thing that's there is a possible title, and I'm thinking about the word going at that line, going at it slow, and that title came from that Zen Pace poem, Even Hurry Slowly, Even Hurry Slowly, because I thought that might sort of catch something rather central to my concerns right now. Here's another one where there's a certain obsession in looking at things, looking at a lizard. My only purpose this moment is looking at a lizard. Does he know he's not alone? He breathes with tiny push-ups, skin all hairline caverns soaking up the sun. I doubt, alive, I'm liable to get closer to timelessness than this, looking at a little lizard breathing. How many of you folks have been to California? Oh, good. I see on the page next to this one, a poem I didn't plan to read, but it's called California Poem. Oddly enough, when it appeared in the magazine, it appeared in the Atlantic Monthly, which is such a totally East Coast poem. I was doing a little reading series there. This was way back in 1972, but I had never been to California. And so I was kind of thinking about it with a lot of excitement, and that's where this poem came from. And decided to talk about the mad dog waves at Carmel deep into the poem, because I just mentioned a lot of the cities. I was using a map. Then the first time I went to Carmel, which is on the Monterey Peninsula, I thought, uh-oh, you know, what if it's a very placid beach? Nothing like the foaming kind of waves that you get from a mad dog. But luckily that day, at least, it was a very stirring kind of crashing waves. I felt that. California poem. I'm reading my works to the state of California, to the seals and the freeways, Salinas, Santa Barbara. I buried my eastern thoughts at the edge of Nevada, slipping through customs without a sigh to declare. I'm testifying from tears over early Saroyan, Anaheim one-liners heard on the Bob Hope Show, girls in Kling Jansens in 1947, navels I sucked as a child in Camden, NJ. For the Bay Bridge, the deserts, Eureka, Catalina, for of mice and men to live off the fat of the land. For the native greens, for the mad dog waves at Carmel, I'm reading my works to the state of California. By God. Since I mentioned New Jersey there, I'll just go on to just jump across the continent to New Jersey. This poem comes from a little experience I had as a kid working in our family store in Camden, NJ. We actually lived in Philadelphia and went across the Delaware River. And weekends I was a kid working there. It has an odd title, Oh, Everything, Absolute Giving. When I was a kid working Saturdays at the Quality Market, our family's market, I'd toss back jokes at the butchers, open brown paper bags with a whoosh, in charge of cutting deals on wilted beans, graying grapefruit lining the floor in green metal tins I bargained over with the poor. One Christmas Eve, inching my prices down out front, trying to sell the last of the wreaths, the mistletoe and trees, all at once, without permission, I shouted, "Free, free Christmas stuff," and could have thrown in the fixtures, blood oranges, blood of the lamb. Such explosion of freedom, such joy filled me then, handing out greens in Camden's hard cold. Here's a poem in several parts, and Mike's introduction made some reference to it, put it back in my mind. Whitewater Vision, I'll just pause briefly between the parts. Whitewater Vision. Like everyone else, I've served my time lying under the weight of a mountain, breathing stones, yet always my blood, like leveling water, knows where it's wanted. Once I had a whitewater vision. Beneath the rage of the rapids, I sensed the undersound to the river's sound, indistinguishable from silence. Who am I? Not a solving, a seeing. I'd view the storm through eyes of calm. I'd speak to say where the silence is. On days when it seems the food for the journey is clay, not bread, and the spirit famished as dusk transfigures everything, I pause, near silence, listening. I like to read this poem because it kind of reminds students, and a lot of you in front of me, I think are students, just judging from what I can see, because it reminds students that teachers are people, and that they suffer their own kinds of anxieties. And also, I found, this is a poem that was written this year, just a few months ago. I found that something I share with just about everybody, that is of having a persisting dream, a dream that comes back every once in a while. Very often people have this dream about
being expected to do a final exam in a math class and they never attended the class. You know, that kind of a dream. This is called damn dream. Oh no, not again. Yes, here it comes, another go at the dream, with its tons of Gothic buildings to wander through. I'm late to teach, can't find the classroom. Couldn't I pick up a dream for once where I'm early, ready, in the zone? But wait, she's phoning for info. Ms. Hope, English Department Secretary. Oh, thank you, precious one, for she's got the room number. But speaking too fast, I better jot down directions, but can't find a pencil, and every scrap of paper's filled with English Department words, margin to margin, insanely late. And can you believe it? That's when they hit the freeze frame on me. Movie's over. Me in a frenzy from knowing somehow that 3 dogged students grow old, hanging on in the old-fashioned classroom with yellowy shades pulled low. And of course I understand this dream, not hard to interpret, just the story of my life. How to get there, help me to get there before they've all gone away. You know, poems come from the most unlikely places. I'm going to read you a poem called Sears and Roebuck, and I'll give you the footnote now, because not everybody knows that Sears used to be called Sears and Roebuck. And that's because Mr. Roebuck sold out, as the poem tells you about. Fairly early on, they were partners, and he sold out to Sears. Where did I get the information about? Well, from Parade magazine. You know that magazine that comes with the Sunday paper? I call it the Gossips. I never read the whole magazine, but I always want to find out what happened to Sybil Shepherd if they ever wrote something on her, so I turned to the Gossips. And sure enough, there was an item on Mr. Roebuck. I learned about it and let me make this poem. Sears and Roebuck. Mr. Roebuck upped and sold his shares pretty early, having had it. He lived the rest of his 90 years modestly in retirement, sniffing his garden's sensible airs, marveling at his luck. Often he must have thought of Sears, how Sears mucked on, poor Cluck. Sears making millions, millions on his ash pit, and Roebuck making Roebuck. I'd like to read you a light poem or two. Not that that one isn't light. Here's one that came to me from my mother-in-law who passed 3 years ago at 100 plus, and she had taught Sunday school in Greenwood, South Carolina for 67 years. They put a little plaque up on the Sunday school room in the First Presbyterian Church there after her passing. And she also, for fewer years than that, but a lot of years, also taught regular school. And she told me these 2 little anecdotes, kind of funny things the students had said at various times, and I just wove them together into a single poem. It's entitled Among Your Mama's Students. It's one of those titles that kind of swirls right into the first line. Among your mama's students, Sunday school, Monday school, I love the little kid who changes the Daniel hymn from dare to have a purpose fine to dare to have a purple spine. And especially the Pledge of Allegiance boy, committed to the flag of the United States of America and to the Republic for Richard stands. Freckle-faced Richard. If this catches on, he'll stand amazed as millions of children, hand to heart and under God, grant solemn devotion to him, to one nation indivisible with liberty and justice, for Richard stands with his big goofy ears and his purple spine. Richard has come very much alive for me. We were also talking about the demands of the world and the busyness that we're all involved in and career making and what have you, playing against our yearning for some kind of spiritual life, that kind of sound and silence relationship that seems to come up over and over again in my work. And Here's an earlier poem that kind of deals with that. And as with so much of what I've written, it actually happened just this way. The Ventnor Waterworks. Ventnor, by the way, is a suburb of Atlantic City, New Jersey. You just move a little bit out of Atlantic City and suddenly you're in Ventnor. The Ventnor Waterworks. I was holding the phone, desperate, you know, the burnt out coil, the warranty refund, waiting to scream at the claims adjuster, when out of the past, a chill green pleasure rose through my body. Summers, riding my bike to the Ventnor Waterworks to drink from the cold of its fountain. I'd enter as if at a temple. No human sound, ferns, everywhere ferns, and a passionate coolness. And there I was, 30 years later, shouting like any maniac, steward of sour grapes, I want my car. That's not my problem. I want my car. I found myself shouting like any maniac, and just magically, suddenly, because why would the two come together? The memory of the Ventnor Waterworks came in. Coolness. I want to read you just two more poems. This is a pretty much of a brand new poem. I think it's about a month old. But I've read it once before and discovered it needed a footnote. It surprised me because one of the students in the audience said, I like that poem, but the last word is, what is that? Minestrone. And I thought, well, it might be one person who doesn't know in any particular audience what minestrone is. So it's an Italian soup, and it's just got all kinds of odds and ends in it. Like if you have some leftover corn kernels, you throw it in your minestrone. Why not? It'll mix in just about anything. And also this poem happens to, the reason I have to read it to you is that right now it's real au courant. It's apropos because it mentions Fenway Park. And you know, what a moment to mention Fenway Park with the Red Sox having finally won the pennant. The Poet's Game. The Poet's Game is baseball because every spit, wacky third base signal, each organ blare, the green, green grass at Fenway counts. Even a bit. The score. And the poet's music is jazz, because when Bird plays Cherokee, he never even gets back to the tune, which is also always, nonetheless, there. The journey marimbas along the ribs to imply the spine. Oh, and the poet's soup is minestrone. I'll finish with the last poem in this book regarding women. It's based on a bit of Tibetan folklore. You know, among Tibetan Buddhists, there's an assumption that we'll all live many, many lives. We'll just keep coming back. But some people don't realize that there's no guarantee that that's going to be another human life. You're very lucky if you get another human life. But, you know, you might be a dog or an ant, A-N-T. But this piece of folklore says it might even be more grim than that. You might come back as a chair in the auditorium or the ceiling, God forbid. I say God forbid because if you were the ceiling, you think of all the energy you would have to spend to keep yourself up. You know, especially because you're a Buddhist ceiling, you don't want to crush everybody. You kill a lot of people. So this love poem partakes of that bit of Tibetan folklore. Within another life, those whose days were grudging or confused may end up trapped within another life as a boulder, or a pane of glass, or a door that suffers every time it's slammed. If I return a boulder, love, some summer day, come sit by me and contemplate these horses and these hills. And if a window pane
gaze through to see the meadow on our walks where brown geese strut. And if I am a door, come home through me. Be sure I'll keep you safe. And if a knotted, twisted rope from long self-clenching and complexity, oh love, unbind, unbraid me then, until I flow again like windswept hair. Thank you all for your attention and for turning up for the poetry reading. I really enjoyed being with you. Thank you.
Reminder that books and CDs are available to purchase.
Believe politicians, and so they're trying to find something real in what they're watching. They're looking for gestures that aren't programmed. So every candidate has to worry about them and think about what they're doing. And finally, I'm sorry to say, the news media spin really does influence voters. I urge people to do what I do. Watch the debate on C-SPAN.